Okay, we can go ahead and at least start a little bit. It is 7 o'clock and we have about 25 people, and perhaps there's going to be a few more folks joining in. My name is Mary Lynn Loader. I am Deputy Director of the Metropolitan Sewer District, and we are meeting tonight to discuss the CSO 5 project, and specifically the North and South Basins. I'm sorry, the North and Martha Basins in North Side. And as many of you know, these projects were required by our consent decree. They are required by US EPA, Ohio EPA, and Orsenka. We completed them specifically for CSO reduction, and we'll talk a little bit more about them tonight. I'm also joined by the MSD Director, Diana Christie, as well as Chief Engineer, Ryan Welsh, and Leslie Shale, who is Supervising Engineer and responsible for operation and maintenance within our green infrastructure, stormwater management controls, as well as Deb Leonard, who is our communications manager. Deb, and also Eric Evers, who is, the two of them are going to help monitor the chat as well as the hand raising and whatnot when we are going through. There's two ways in which that you can ask questions, either through the chat, and you can get to the chat by the drop down screen in the little icon that has a chat, and you could ask a question there. You can also raise your hand. I do have about 25 or so slides I'm going to go through. And specifically, the format tonight is to be able to provide you with some background and overview of the two basins of the project, as well as give you an update on some various actions taken by MSD over the llast 2 years, specifically right after the June 2019 storm events that we had. We've done a number of things, and we wanted to give you an update on those things. We also want to give you an overview of how the basins actually function to help just with that understanding, and then also give you an update on some the current status and next steps of the basins and where we're headed. And specifically, like I said, I do have about 25 slides I'm going to go through. Not everyone is going to be, really long and whatnot. We will have time for questions at the end. Like I said, you could use the chat, the drop down, or you can raise your hand. We will be monitoring that, and we will get to your questions. We will stay as long as we need to get through questions. And we are also recording this, and we will have this posted and available as a follow-up so that you can review things if you'd like to. And I think those are just all the announcements that I wanted to make at the beginning. And like I said, Diana Christie is joining me, as well as Ryan, and I may be deferring to them for some questions or responses specifically as we move on. So first of all, wanted to just give you a background and overview of the CSO 125 basins, and specifically point out what the project is, what the CSO 125 project is, just as a refresher. As you may recall, we have the North Basin, which is located up at the northern part of the project area along Kirby Avenue. We have Martha Basin, which is to the south. And then we also have a storm sewer that runs about a mile. And that storm sewer takes the natural drainage, the storm water from the drainage area, and then brings it down to the West Fork Channel. And that's at the location of where we have a combined sewer overflow that's labeled CSO, Combined Sewer Overflow 125. So those are the major components of the project. Specifically, the project, the two basins and the storm sewer were constructed as part of CSO 125 project in 2018 and 19 and 20 as part of the Lower Mill Creek Partial Remedy. That was a bundle of projects, about 22 projects that we constructed as part of our CSO control of the consent decree that we have. The original project design objectives were to reduce our combined sewer overflows getting into the West Fork Creek, also improve water quality, and that the other design criteria was to consider the fact that there were historical flooding issues in this area, and the intent was to not make that any worse. And so those were some of the design objectives and criteria that were used to design these projects. So I just want to give you a little bit more of a deeper dive into the different basins that we have. So right now we're starting up at the North Basin, and just for the sake of the way that this is laid out for the computer, we kind of had to turn it. So it's really north is kind of pointed to the lower right-hand side of our screen down here. And the way that flow comes into the North Basin is it's coming from the north to the south, and it comes out into the basin by a structure that's located at the northern edge of there, the tip of that. And it flows through the basin and has two ways to get out. It can go into, this is a storm outlet structure, and that's what connects it to that 1 mile or so length of storm sewer that goes down to the West Fork Channel. It also has a relief point that gets into the combined sewer should there be not enough capacity in that storm pipe, and it needs to be relieved. And so it can also get into that our combined sewer. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and some of the modifications that we made to help improve the conveyance and really reduce the likelihood of this overtopping. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Here's just a visual of what the North Basin looks like if you're out there. This is looking west from Kirby. So again, the storm water is coming from the north, coming into the basin, and ultimately it's flowing through that basin. It's filling up in this area, and then this structure right here is how it gets into our storm sewer. We also made some additional modifications to this structure, and I'll talk a little bit about what those are as well. And then again, the relief point to the combined sewer, should there not be enough capacity in the storm sewer, then there is an opportunity for the flow to get into the combined sewer as well. Then the Martha Basin, which is located a little bit to the south down on Virginia Avenue. That is located, again, we turned the design of this so that it lays better on the screen. North is to the right-hand side of the screen here. And the way that water is getting into this basin is that there was already an existing storm sewer, and we added additional storm sewer to get into this basin. And this is the location right across from Martha Avenue, is how water gets into this basin, and then ultimately it flows during dry conditions or not significant rain. It just gets right down into this outlet structure and then goes out. One thing I want to just point out here, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit, is we've got these numerous bends in the pipe, and that is not an ideal scenario to have those bends, and that is causing some problems of bubbling of water coming out of that manhole that's located at Martha, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Just have another visual here of, before I move on to those, then in addition to the outlet structure of getting into the storm, there is another relief point of the Martha Basin on the south end of it, where it can get into, again, the combined sewer here for additional relief. We made some additional modifications to that spillway, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. This is just another visual of what it looks like if you're looking at the basin from Virginia Avenue. Again, we have the inflow of stormwater coming into the basin from this culvert here, and ultimately during insignificant rainwater will hit the ground here and then kind of make its way to the outlet to the storm sewer and then continue its way down to the West Fork Channel. If there is not enough capacity there, or if this basin is filling up, then again, the relief point to the combined sewer is kind of located off the screen here, and it's to the south of this basin. We also have some monitoring equipment at both the Martha Basin and the North Basin. This black box that you see that sticks out of this structure here, that is our monitoring equipment that helps us get data on how the basin or the pipe is filling up with water, and so we're able to remotely monitor those levels. The next thing I want to the other thing I want to just mention is, and we're going to be talking about, is the June 2019 flooding event that we experienced in Northside when the project was still under construction. And again, so this was almost 2 years now, and we now certainly have more information than we did then. And I'm going to go over what the conditions were that we were experiencing then. So on June 15th and June 16th, there was a storm event that led to a significant flooding situation. I know many of you are intimately familiar with that, where the North Basin was actually still under construction. And while it was under construction, essentially the rain events that we had were first a 2-year event and then a 50-year event. And a 50-year event is a much more intense rain event, and it specifically hit this drainage area. So whenever we have any kind of rain event, MSD has very sophisticated data that we get from different resources that is defined just specifically for that particular cell or region, and very small region of our sewer district, that tells us very specifically about how much and the intensity of the rainfall. So we know for a fact that it was a 2-year and a 50-year rain event. And what that resulted in was an oversaturation of the soils, and coupled with the fact that the basin was still under construction and it did not have any grass or any vegetation growing on it, that did not allow the basin and the dam structure to stay in place and hold it in place. And so what happened is that the dam on the south side of the North Basin was washed away during those back-to-back 50-year storm and the 2-year storm. And that resulted in stormwater flowing out of the basin, overtopping the basin, and essentially breached the dam, and water was flowing down Kirby, Virginia, as well as towards the Martha Basin. And I know we've been, we've had meetings about that. There was a commission's meeting that we've had information about that, and as well as city council meetings about that. And I want to really focus on what actions MSD has taken since that June back-to-back storm, and what kind of assurance we can share with you in terms of what we know now, what we've done differently, what we continue to do to ensure that we don't have that same kind of thing happen again. So the next part of my slides here are to really talk about those actions that we've taken since June of 2019. And so, so before the June event, this is again the north. This is the visual of the North Basin, and again, this was that structure where stormwater can get into, and then this is the structure that is the relief point that when the June events occurred, the only way for the relief of the basin, if this inlet was too filled with stormwater, too much stormwater, the only way that it could relieve itself, it had to get up to this point, and then it could get into our the combined sewer. What we did immediately after the June 2019 event, actually 4 days after that event, we constructed a 5x5 relief point in the overflow relief outlet to the combined sewer, so that should this outlet to the storm be inundated, that there is a more rapid relief point to the combined sewer. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to just put that out there as an early action that we did at the time of the June 2019 event. Other things that we did is that we did offer free cleanups to the impacted residents that were impacted by the Martha and the North Basin flooding. These cleanups were done under our sewer backup program. However, they were not related to a sewer backup. However, because we kind of had the resources, we had our cleaning contractors, and we had that mechanism, and because the project was still in construction, it was an MSD asset, we did utilize our sewer backup program, even though it wasn't a sewer capacity related issue. We actually had capacity in the combined sewer at the time, but again, it was because it could not get into that combined sewer up here because we did not have that additional opening into the combined sewer. MSD has also reimbursed residents for damage claims. We've received about 25 claims. There are a few that remain outstanding. I think there's only 3 that remain outstanding. We've also conducted an internal investigation on the basin design as well as the construction. And in addition to the internal investigation that we did, we hired a third-party expert that we had never actually worked with before, but was very much well respected within the industry, to perform an independent investigation of the cause of the event that was experienced in June of 2019. The findings from that was that there were flaws that were identified in the design of the project. And that third-party expert did develop and provide a detailed written report of his findings. We did make that report public in April of 2020. And that was a report that we provided to the city council with it's called an FYI memo, and provided that investigation, and that was a public document. Ultimately, the design flaws included, and certainly Ryan Welsh or Diana can chime in here or answer questions about it at the end. Essentially, the design flaws that the third-party expert identified was that there was inadequate overflow structure, specifically at the North Basin, and that there was insufficient freeboard, meaning that there didn't appear to be enough capacity within that the basin as it was designed and constructed at the time, in order to safely handle the flow of a 100-year storm. It also lacked a spillway at the North Basin, and it also recommended that additional modifications be made to the spillway at the Martha Basin as well. Also, there was an identification of inadequate construction specifications, and these are all detailed in Director Christie's memo to the city manager at the time, and then also is detailed in the attachment that was the third-party report. Essentially, it boils down to the fact that the third party identified that the basin was designed with insufficient detention volume for larger storms, and that revisions would be needed in the project design to address that, the fact that there's insufficient capacity to assure flood protection as well as consent decree compliance. Now, some of the measures that we took since then have helped to resolve that, and we could talk a little bit about that. So specifically, what MSD did at the time, and actually maybe I'll just look at the chat. I know that
I was going to say, do we want to pause and address the questions that
Yeah.
came up since they're to that's this specific issue? I think that the first question that I thought, was relevant to the current slides. And good evening, everyone. And Marilyn introduced me earlier. I'm Diana Christie, and I'm just gonna suggest that we address the first one that was of the design flaws that we just listed, or that were identified by our third party, which have been implemented. And I thought that was a pertinent question to address right away. Although it's not. It's not quite that simple, but one, obviously, the construction specifications had to do with the sequencing of the work. Obviously, the construction is now completed. So that is, we couldn't go back in time and change the way the project was constructed, but we have completed construction, and Marilyn has a few slides that are going to detail why that makes a difference. And why that, is essentially addressing that issue of having the berm and a lot of the other measures of the final project completed. And then the inadequate overflow structure has been addressed essentially. What was a temporary fix has become really a permanent fix with the outlet, with larger outlet to that structure. And then the second question, and I'm going to ask either Mary Lynn or Ryan probably to get into the technicality of I believe what you're asking, which is, wouldn't that relief that we put in place cause CSO overflow and flooding? So I think the key with respect to CSO overflow, I want to address that just by saying, yes, by modifying the outlet structure, we are now putting more stormwater back into our combined sewer, and therefore that stormwater now goes downstream and could potentially potentially continues to contribute to overflows at that CSO. We're still, and we'll get to this later, but we're still evaluating whether or not that is something that we have to address for compliance with our consent decree. But if one of you wants to address that a little bit further, I think that would be helpful. The question.
Hi, this is Ryan Welsh, and Diana, I can add to your explanation. I think the modification to the overflow structure, the addition of the 5x5 hole in the side of it, addressed all three, the first three bullet points that were really pertain to the design that was constructed according to the plans and specifications. Inadequate overflow structure, insufficient freeboard, and lack of spillway. All three of those things are really addressed by providing that relief point. And the second thing that I wanted to put out there was the fact that prior to the project, everything that came down the creek drained through this combined sewer pipe. And the project didn't do anything to take away capacity in that sense. We added a 36-inch storm sewer. So with the 36-inch storm sewer, the ability to utilize the capacity in the existing combined sewer, there hasn't been a change that would make things worse than what it was prior to the project.
Yeah, thank you, Diana and Ryan. Then there is a follow-up question to that, Ryan. I'll just ask it and you can answer from Noel. The overflow relief may work for the most part, but there is still capacity issues of water collecting at the flash point directly south of the North Basin.
I'm not sure what flash point means. I was attempting to kind of address these comments about capacity.
Yep. Yeah, Noel, you can unmute yourself. Do you want to clarify what you mean by flash point?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, I'm at a baseball game. So the flash point I'm talking about is, so my property is directly south of the North Basin, And there is a creek that runs between my building and the building that would be, you know, to the east of me. So that creek actually used to be a much bigger, and there was even on Memorial Avenue, like a bridge that went across this very big creek. So now this creek, this has sort of always been before the North Basin. This has been the lowest point where the water has started at Memorial and Kirby, kind of, from what I've seen. And the creek will still back up to the point where water is going onto the road. And it's due to, you know, just a very small hole and just a lack of grading, I think, in that naturally forming creek. And so especially whenever that secondary release would happen and the water overflows from that creek, I feel like it could potentially even be, you know, like contaminated water or something. It's just
Is this
definitely
upstream of the North Basin or downstream?
so south, that's downstream.
Oh, downstream.
So I don't think we modified any natural drainage between the North Basin and the Martha Basin.
Yeah, and so it's an actual problem that wasn't addressed, right? So we have the North Basin, right? Then we have
Yeah.
Memorial Avenue, which is like that concrete, you know, it's a street. And right across from that, there is like this big depression where like another pipe was put in. You know, the woods were cut down, like it was dug out. I guess we would call it, I don't know if we call it a spillway or not, but the issue lies in literally this creek that used to contain all the water. That's where the flooding used to start. You guys did the North Basin, but between the North Basin and directly south of Memorial Avenue, you know, this issue right there in between tends to still flood. And there is a 10-foot, I think, like sewer outlet right there. But the hole that the creek drains into is, I think, only like 6 foot big. It's a very easy fix, but I still see overflow happening right there. And it comes onto the street and it's part of the combined sewer. So it definitely concerns me.
Okay, we'll look at that. We can look at that offline and see what specifically you're talking about there.
Could you give us the address?
What's that?
No,
The address?
1811 Memorial Avenue. I've talked to Deb a ton of times, and you know, you guys have been so helpful with any problems I've had. But you know, I just feel like I realized that not only to the west of my buildings, I have the oversaturated soil problem due to the really, really large pipe that was put directly uphill. And then to the east of my building, I have this capacity issue of that, you know, the live sewer, combined sewer sort of system.
okay, we will we'll take a look at that and be back in touch. I know that we do have your contact information.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Because, you know, when you were talking about just the water flowing down, you know, the street or from the hill, you know, we definitely don't have sewers on one side of the road.
Yep.
So there's just a lot of water that comes down that hill.
Okay.
And I think we're sort of at the bottom of a lot of hills. So
Yeah,
we really
yeah.
just need to have some focus there.
Yeah, we'll look at it, and we'll also talk with our, you know, the stormwater utility. They also are responsible, and you know, of course, that's parkland in some of that area too. But we can follow up with you after this. I do want to move on with regards to other actions that we took after the June 2019 event. You know, as
Mary Lynn, just
yes.
We do have a hand raise that's been up for a while.
Okay, I'm sorry, Marzell.
Marzell.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Marzell. Sorry about that. I'll unmute you. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm going to wait because really all the technical questions was really before my question that was sort of a beginning question. So I'll just wait until the Q&A.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Marzell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as we mentioned, the basin was still under construction when the June 2019 back-to-back storms occurred. Now Now, what we did direct our contractor to do was to rebuild the dam, and stabilize it, as well as get it vegetated. And this is a visual of, looking east towards Kirby. It is at the elevation it was supposed to be now. It's grassed. It's, actually got a drive on top of it. So it is a stabilized structure now. Vegetation was planted, it's since grown, and really that root system of the vegetation is so important to help keep the dam in good shape, and also kind of keep trees and stuff off it, because those roots of trees would actually impact negatively the dam. So that's why we like to keep structures like this just covered with grassy vegetation. So that is very effective. And then I want to just go back to the additional 5 by 5 foot structure that we have here. And here's a picture of Leslie actually posing for us to show how large that new opening is that we made to the combined sewer entry point, which is a relief. And as Ryan said, and someone in their question did allude to the fact that, isn't this just going to bring more combined sewage to the West Fork? When we have a rain event that is large enough to allow water to get into this structure, it is possible, and it is going to be a result that we do have more stormwater getting into the combined at that time. However, the storm is still diverting flow out of the combined sewage, so we are still getting CSO reduction. We just may not be getting as much as was originally calculated by the design engineer when we were planning this project, but there still is CSO reduction. Just even the fact that we have this new structure hole, a hole cut into the combined sewer. So within 4 days of the event, we modified this because of the concern of the basin filling up the way that it did, and the fact that for one reason that we still have not been able to determine, and the third party was not able to determine, why would not the storm take on as much as we needed it to. And so this 5 by 5 cutout was made, and it has since been determined that it actually is needed for that additional relief, and that the basin was not constructed to be able to hold as much as it needs to for the criteria that it was supposed to be designed for. So because of that, it was determined that this relief structure is needed, and it is actually performing very well. We are doing monitoring to see how much flow we are still getting out of the combined. We're still doing that monitoring, and we don't have the results of that. It's still going to take us several months to collect that data. But this additional box that was cut out of the combined sewer does provide some additional relief and safety for the operation of the structure. An additional measure that was taken is that we installed this cage bar screen around the entrance of the combined sewer. And there's actually 2 openings in here. You can only see like this cage right here, but there's actually a 12-inch storm sewer here, and then there's another larger one here, so that if flow does get up to this point, we do have 2 entry points into the storm sewer, and then this bar screen helps to keep debris out. Originally, we just had this trash rack, it's called. And with the additional installation of this bar screen, that helps to keep debris out even better, and stops blockages from happening, so that we'll get even more effectiveness of the getting flow into the storm sewer. Another thing that we did last year was we had a lot of erosion of the basin, and so we installed this very specialized erosion control matting system. It's called a Fleximat, and it's really helps to keep the soil in place. It helps to allow vegetation to grow up in between it, reduces the hillside erosion, and it makes keeping the basin clean and effective and ready for the next storm much better. So we installed that last year, and that seems to be holding up very well. Now moving on to the Martha Basin, another thing that was done is that we lowered the spillway. This is the spillway at the end of Martha towards the south. It's a spillway that goes to the combined sewer. So this is the low flow channel, it's called, and then we have like this an elevation difference of about 2 feet. So water has to fill up into the basin up to the top of this spillway, and then it can overtop and get into the combined sewer, which is located down below. If you could see that that red truck, it's located right at the base of that there, and that's how water is relieved. Should it be too high in the Martha Basin, it actually gets directed back into that combined sewer. And so we did reduce that down. It was the plan to reduce that down following the June 2019 event. Before we were able to do that, though, we did have another 50-year storm that impacted the area, and we did receive just a few reports of flooding on Virginia Avenue following May 18th, 2020 event. That was a 50-year event, which is another significant storm, and the spillway backed up, and specifically because of high water down in the West Fork Creek. And so as a precautionary measure, we did have our crews at the Martha Basin, and we pumped out water from the Martha Basin into the combined, and that and we were already planning to reduce the height of that spillway, and we were able to do that after the May 2020 event. It was done shortly after, and we lowered that spillway by about 1.5 feet. And so that again makes it more effective as a relief point to get to the combined sewer. Should we, should it be increasing, because we don't want to create any worse flooding events that are out there. So I'm going, yeah.
This is Ryan. There were a couple questions in the chat, a couple technical questions that I wanted to respond to.
Sure, go ahead.
One, there was a question about the size of the combined sewer and the material. It varies between 96-inch and 120-inch, and the material is also, some of it is brick sewer, some of it is concrete. So it depends, and I guess if there's any follow-up on that, that can be addressed. The other question was about if there's a permanent solution for debris getting into the basins, and I'll just say that is the permanent solution. This is a maintenance item. We have to, debris comes when branches drop, leaves drop. A lot of it's seasonal. When we get a rainfall, and it flushes it out of the woods. So this is normal, but it is a maintenance activity.
Okay, very good.
So yeah, it looked like Marilyn clarified her question a little bit. And I see Deb responding, and so I just want to be clear.
Well, hang on, yeah.
Because it depends on which outlet structure you're asking about. I think she was asking about the one that we enlarged, constructed the 5x5 outlet from the North Basin, which does go to the combined sewer. But I want to make sure she understood that, because there's 2 outlets in the North Basin, and one goes to the storm and one goes to the combined.
Yep, this is what goes to the storm. As you can see, it's a concrete structure, raised structure that goes to a brand new storm sewer. And then this is the structure that flow goes to the combined. And there's just another illustration. That's the cutout, it's concrete. And then, yeah, I'll be addressing some of the maintenance issues in a little bit. Was there another question you want to address in the chat, Ryan? I'm trying not to open them because I don't want to.
I think we're good.
There was one thing that I wanted to clarify that you said, that we were going to make a modification to the spillway at the Martha Basin prior to 2020. And I don't know if we made that in response to a rain event in 2020. And the decision to do that wasn't made until May of 2020. And like it's a precautionary measure. It wasn't a result of any actual or negative impact, but we thought it would operate better.
Okay, thank you. Let me figure out where I was now. Okay, so how the basins operate, we do have some illustrations, just some additional illustrations to kind of show. Let's see if I can get to this real quickly. So this is just another illustration to show how the North Basin works. So again, the water is coming in from the storm inlet, going down the low flow channel, getting into the storm sewer. Once it gets to a certain level, that's where it can get back into the combined sewer system based on that additional cutout that we created. And then of course it can also get into the overflow structure from the top as well, as is illustrated here. So that is the North Basin, and then we have the Martha Basin, which again, the inlet allows the water to come in through the low flow channel, goes to the storm. As water is filling up, then the water can get up to the spillway, and that is where it then will be provided a relief to get to the combined sewer from there. So those are just some illustrations to help just visualize how it actually operates. So today's current status, the construction project themselves were officially determined substantially complete almost a year after the June 2019 event. It was determined complete on June 30th, 2020. At this point, the dam is secure. It has established vegetation. The North Basin does have the additional relief added with the 5x5 entry to the combined sewer. The Martha Spillway has been also lowered for additional relief. MSD also regularly inspects the structures to ensure proper operation and maintenance, and to make sure it's prepared and ready to perform for the next storm. And then we also monitor the flows before, during, and after rain events. So now I want to just highlight a few questions that we did receive or do receive often, and I guess we can. I'm going to go through those, if I know, just for the interest of time, and then we'll open it up to other questions as well. So the question is, why does the Martha Basin have foam in it? So just real generally, runoff. The runoff that we're receiving into these basins is coming from natural areas, from wooded areas that does bring, woody debris into the basin. And as woody debris decomposes and also air is introduced to the whole system, the woody debris has different natural organic oils that mixed with the air creates bubbles and foam. So it's not unusual in a situation like this and in natural spaces to see, some kind of foam. It's not the kind of, foam that you see from detergents and stuff like that. That would be a different kind of real bubbly foam. This is something that's what we see out at the Martha Basin, is something that's more from the natural woody vegetation. Another question we often get is, why is the road that we have out there flooded? And so the maintenance road was specifically constructed to be able to perform maintenance in the basins during dry weather. So it's not unusual or unexpected that the access road would be underwater during rain events. So we just want to point that out because that seems to be a question. We also, and I did see a question in the chat about the basin, the Martha manhole. This is Martha Avenue, and sometimes this manhole bubbles. And so the question about about, why is it bubble? And going back to that several 90 degree bends that we have in the sewer is really creating an inefficiency or additional pressure in that sewer line that causes that manhole to have bubbling tendencies. So we are evaluating different options to remove those bends, and that would most likely improve the conveyance of the water to the West Fork Channel, specifically potentially just make a straight shot and get rid of all of these bends here. It was something that was done in the design because of some right-of-way issues, but we are evaluating that at this time. In terms of maintenance, there was a question about maintenance earlier. So what are we doing on maintenance of the basins? So we do use both in-house and contracted resources to perform both routine and preventative maintenance. Specifically, the contractors that we have attend to the basins on a rotation of twice per month. And what they do is they're weeding, they're picking up trash, they're mowing, they're pruning, they're looking for problems and helping us to address those problems. We also, MSD internal resources, we inspect our basins after every large storm. We define a large storm by anything greater than 1/4 inch of rain within 24 hours. We remove debris. We are looking at structures, looking for blockages, looking for, again, the readiness for that storm. So you can see, debris piled up in here. We're clearing that out. We're getting the rocks back in their places of where they need to be, and making sure that the system is ready for the next storm. Also during storms, we are performing visual inspections to see how it's operating, to look for problems. We're doing that, on a regular basis when we are experiencing rainfall. In addition, we have cameras and remote monitoring equipment located at the basins. This is a visual of, we have a camera located on the top of the structure at the North Basin. And then we also have, as I pointed out earlier, the remote monitoring equipment located at both basins as well. And this is just a box that is keeping some of the telemetry. So do we want to pause here before we move on to next steps? Are there additional questions of some of the stuff that I went over, or are we ready to move on? Not monitoring.
There was one or two just kind of technical questions about the structures and the outlet structures. And so maybe, maybe those would be probably quick to address.
Sure.
And I think the other ones are more about the levels of rainfall and the whole 50-year, 100-year storm, which is maybe we can wait until after we go over the next steps before we get into that discussion. But I think if you would just real quickly want to, maybe, I don't know if you need to pull up the slide from the beginning, but with respect to the Martha Basin, Marilyn Wall asked a question about what the outlet fall structures are again, what it outfalls to.
Okay, at the Martha Basin?
On the Martha, yeah.
Okay.
So we could quickly address that and then probably wrap up, and then we can talk about.
So this is actually a visual I'm going to use for the Martha Basin. This is the actual outfall structure right here. So it comes in from this culvert right here, and the low flow channel is taking it to this outfall structure right here and taking it to the new storm sewer. If the basin's filling up here, then another outfall structure is back here, and that's where the spillway is that goes to the combined. So during most wet weather events, the stormwater that's coming in from this culvert here is flowing down the low flow channel and then exiting the basin through the structure that's on the other side of this here. And you want me to go back to the main visual?
I think that's sufficient, unless
Okay.
she wants us to. It seems like there's a lot of other questions coming in, but
Okay.
perhaps we can just finish the slides because there's like 2 left, and
There's
then
only
we
2
can
more.
jump into all the questions.
We did have a hand raised from Sue. I don't know. You lowered your hand, so I don't know if the question was answered, but just acknowledging that the hand did go up.
Okay, Sue, do you want to ask your question?
Well, it, it was really a comment prior to the construction. I don't know if it was a MSD engineer or somebody from the construction company met with me and another Northsider who at the time was leading our local redevelopment group about purchasing the house on the corner of Martha and Kirby to avoid that bent pipe. And at the time, the other person was totally against removing that house because there are a lot of people in Northside who don't want to see houses taken down. But I understand that property, which has been vacant for the whole time we've lived here, which is 10 years, belongs to the Port Authority. And I'm wondering if there might be some relief. I know at the time, whoever we talked to offered to take it down and put a park there or something like that. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that because maybe that's part of your solution.
Yes, we did actually talk to the port about that. And so we are in discussions with them about the possibility of doing something to, to be able to address that bend. And we're at the very early stages of talking to them about that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Mary Lynn, I'd like to address a question that's in the chat
Yep.
about rainfall. Because I think I tried to respond and I think there's been some confusion. And Eric responded, it looks like it's not just the amount of rainfall. So a 50-year event or a 100-year event, there are charts. So it's, a simple Google search won't get you the answer. It depends on the area, but for our region, it would depend on the amount of rainfall in inches, as well as the intensity of the rainfall and the duration of the rainfall. So that it's not a straightforward answer, and it's not 4 inches and it's not 6.6 inches. It could be 4 inches that comes down in 15 minutes, and I'm just pulling that number out of the air. But it's or it could be 6 inches over in a 1 hour or 2 hour period. But the answer to the question is it depends. What is a 50-year event or a 100-year event? So I hope I didn't make it more confusing, but I just wanted to clear that up, that there isn't, we can certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of information out there about, of course, the 100-year events, the different, another way to think about it too is a 100-year event is considered to occur at a 1% chance every year. So that doesn't mean you're only going to see it once every 100 years. Every year there is a 1% chance that you will experience a 100-year event. And then there's, different percentages for every other storm that's out there too, and the lower the event. So for example, I think a 2-year event is a 98% chance or whatnot. I might, there's a lot of information about there, and it's all people get PhDs on this stuff for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say that last question, how do we know? Well, that's the whole thing. It's determined after the fact, and it's determined based on, sensors that we have and to know how much rainfall came and what duration, and a lot of data and in fact, calculations and evaluation after the fact.
Yeah, and we actually we collect the data, but we are not the ones who's determining it's a 100-year or a 50-year or a 2-year. It's an independent contractor that does this all over the country, and we have a contract with them to do it for us when we need it. They do all of our storms, but then we have them do some of them in a very rapid period of time based on the data that we have. We have rain gauges and data that we're collecting, but we are not the ones who are determining what level of storm it is. So it is an independent contractor that does that. I think I saw another one. Let's see. soil saturation effects of stormwater problems as well. So consistent rain can cause overflow or flooding too. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, if you have saturated soil before a storm, then that, you know, just like a 2-year event could have a much bigger impact on, you know, an area if it's already saturated, as opposed to if it's, you know, maybe hasn't rained for, you know, 3 weeks and the soil is well drained, you know. So there's a lot of other factors, not just rainfall, but, you know, like what we experienced in June. The soil was saturated, the vegetation was not there. And so that, you know, really exasperated the problem. And so Marilyn also had another question: what causes the basin to drain at the low end? And then what size pipes does the spillway go to? So what causes the basin to drain at the low end is the water is filling up into the basin. And if it can't exit the storm quick enough, then it's rising in the basin. And if that level of the water in the basin gets to the point to the spillway, then it's going to overflow and get into the combined sewer on the south end.
It doesn't answer the question. What if it is not quite up to the spillway, but you still have water in the basin? Is there
Then it's
no
going to
outlet
release into the storm sewer.
at the top end of the basin? That doesn't make sense because the elevation is higher there.
The elevation is lower at the north end of the basin. So
Yeah.
that the spillway, the south end, that's the higher elevation.
Okay, so you have no pipe near the spillway.
No, it's over.
That
It goes
concrete
over the
channel?
spillway.
The concrete channel runs actually backwards from the spillway. So it runs away from the spillway. So during dry weather, it flows
Yep.
down to the 36 inch. It will only go over the spillway if it, like Mary Lynn said, if we get too much rain and it overtops.
Okay, and then what size pipe leaves the spillway?
The spillway, if it overtops the spillway, it returns to the combined sewer, which is 120 inches, I believe, at that location.
There's a 120-inch pipe at the bottom of the spillway?
No, there's a
It's the existing-
24-inch pipe that was existing culvert under the road that dumps into the 120-inch combined sewer.
Okay, and is it 24-inch the whole distance between the spillway and the larger, super large combined pipe?
No, there's an open channel. There's a stretch of open channel,
Here, I can show you.
a culvert that existed prior to the project that we did not install.
You mean on the other side of this?
Right.
Yeah,
It
I
goes
saw
from
it
the
in one of the pictures.
spillway
but-
and the pipe into
Right, yeah, there.
24-inch pipe. And I'm saying from that 24-inch pipe to the 96-inch pipe, are there any changes in pipe size? Does it go up in size, down in
No,
size,
I don't think so.
overflow going into there? Can you check on that and let me know?
No, I don't believe that's a 24-inch pipe that
All the way to the
exits
90.
to 120. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, are there other questions before we move on to next steps? Okay, hearing none. So then next steps. So MSD's third-party report identified the design deficiencies that we mentioned earlier. We are currently working with a designer. Ryan is specifically has his staff working with the designer to address those deficiencies. And the overflowing manhole and the bubbling manhole at Martha is one example of that. So as we mentioned earlier, we're considering straightening those bends, those 90-degree bends out to help the conveyance. And we believe that should be able to address that particular issue. But we do expect having some additional recommendations later this summer to address those design deficiencies. We're also Ryan and his staff are working with the designer and others to evaluate the basin capacity and the conditions, really to ensure that the short and long-term safe operation. You know, we have made modifications already, and those have proven to be very effective to date, but we're not done. We're continuing to look at what else might be good and prudent for us to do, and should modifications be required specifically of the dam for the North Basin, we will be coordinating and complying with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources dam safety regulations. ODNR, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, is the lead agency, the agency that has primacy over dam regulations. And so we would certainly be coordinating with them should there be any need to make any modifications to the structure. MSD is also evaluating the Lower Mill Creek partial remedy compliance. The Lower Mill Creek partial remedy is made up of 22 different projects. It doesn't, it was developed in such a way that we have to achieve an aggregate, a total volume reduction with all of the projects taken into account, not just, Lick Run and by itself, and not West Fork by itself, and not Bloody Run by itself. But by doing all of these 22 projects in a bundle, the compliance for them, the CSO reduction volume, is going to be determined and evaluated for all of them together. And that was how our Lower Mill Creek partial remedy revised original alternative was approved, is that the CSO volume will be evaluated in total together. So if more CSO reduction is needed, because obviously we've made changes, we talked about tonight how we have made additional openings into the combined sewer to provide additional relief, so we're not keeping as much stormwater out of our combined as we were originally considering. So it is not, we're not estimating that the West Fork projects will be as effective. However, we have many other projects that are part of the LMCPR that will, and we do believe are performing exceptionally well and potentially even better than was estimated. So we just don't know yet. And it takes time and it takes data. And we're looking at and are collecting more data to be able to determine compliance on that. But we don't have that information at this point in time. We will be collecting information, rainfall data, flow monitoring data through the next several months, and then that has to be evaluated in QA/QC. So we won't really know until till sometime next spring in terms of how we're doing on that. But we're continuing to collect data, and we'll be reviewing and reporting out on that. And then, of course, we're going to continue to operate, maintain, and monitor how the basins are operating. From now until the end of time. That's just what we do. That's why we build these things, is to operate and maintain them and monitor them for the long term. So with that, those are all of the slides that I had, and I did want to now turn to some of the questions. And let's see. I see another question from Maryland. Has MSD gotten approval from Ohio EPA and US EPA for the changes to the basins? We have reported to the Ohio EPA and US EPA and Orsenco the modifications that we met. And again, they were determined to be substantially completed with construction. They did have to, we did have to make modifications, for the protection of public safety and whatnot. And again, we will be monitoring the effectiveness of the CSO reduction. If we have to make additional modifications to get additional CSO control, it was always estimated and known at the time when we were evaluating the possibility of, the revised original alternative for LMCPR, that if we need to make more CSO, more separation and extend storm sewers in more areas to get more CSO reduction volume, we'll do that. So that's really what the point of the post-construction monitoring evaluation is.
We have
So we-
two raised hands as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eric.
Marzel and Lori.
Okay, Marzel, you've been very
Yes.
patient.
Yes, thank you. I feel kind of out of place, but I really want to get some history here. My question is tonight the meeting MSD promised us back in June of 2019 to discuss what happened that caused the flooding? If this is not the meeting, when did it occur and will it take place? If we do not have been told what caused the flood in the backup of 2019, how are we supposed to evaluate what you're telling us tonight about the present and future of the Martha and Kirby basins?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll ask Diana if she wants to chime in as well. I think the answer is yes. This is the meeting that we're telling you what happened. And I think this slide specifically does it, that the Martha Basin, I'm sorry, the North Basin was still under construction. I also want to emphasize it was not a backup. This was not a sewer backup event. It was two back-to-back very large storms that occurred and hit the north side area while this North Basin was still under construction. We had oversaturation of soils and the dam did not have vegetation on it. And that caused the dam to be washed away, which caused stormwater to flow down out of the basin, not the way that it was designed to flow out of the basin. It, breached the basin berm and washed away and flow, went right down the street and caused significant flooding. However, it was also a 50-year storm, and there's no storm sewers that are designed to be able to convey that amount of flow. But because this basin was still under construction and the fact that, again, back-to-back storms, oversaturation of soils, no vegetation, that is what our internal and the independent investigation determined that, and that report was provided, and we can provide you a copy of that report of the evaluation that was done that evaluated what caused the problem.
Mary Lynn, I'll add that the primary, what I would consider the primary design flaw with this project is that the basin was not sized adequately. The designer made a mistake. Our third-party expert identified that as well. And had the basin been sized appropriately, it wouldn't have filled up as fast as it did. And that's why we had to make the subsequent modification to the overflow structure.
And I also just want to add, just to respond directly to your question about the timing of the meeting. And yes, we had the report and we made that available publicly a year ago. It is almost a year ago today. And really, I'm not making excuses, but I just want to say that we would have had a meeting last year. We did start doing virtual meetings, but this did not take place in large part just because of the interruption of COVID to all of our lives and our work. And really, it was the beginning of this year when we kind of we've been doing work, we've been addressing this, but when we really came back and said we need to reach out to you all and and have this meeting that we promised we were going to have last year. So I do apologize for that, and I'm glad that you were able to join tonight, and we'll continue to make ourselves available.
We still have hands raised. Lori Jones was next.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. I just wanted to be added to the list of people with overflowing manhole problems. I feel that there are 2 raised manholes a couple doors up from me, close to 4736 Kirby, I believe it is. I never noticed this before, but this year, after a couple of the heavier rains that we had earlier in the season, I'm definitely experienced, the smell of contaminated water flowing down the gutter of the street. I feel like there's obvious dissolved toilet tissue in the area, some little fat balls of some sort floating around and traveling down the curb. So I didn't know if anyone was aware of that and if there was a possible way to mitigate that problem.
I'd like to say that the overflowing manhole that we're aware of at Martha it's stormwater. It's not wastewater, and we're not aware of any wastewater that could be flowing down the street or coming out of manholes.
Well, that would bring me to my next question. Is there somebody that I can contact when it occurs the next time so they can see it and smell it when it happens?
Yes, you can call 357-4900. That's 513-357-4900. That is our waste.
352. 352.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Diana. Oh my gosh.
Let's put it in.
352-4900 is our wastewater collection dispatch. If somebody could type that into the chat, that would be great too. And we could have somebody go out there when you are experiencing that to investigate it and figure out what is the source of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to having heavy runoff, because we're sort of in the receiving area of things that are uphill from us, but I've never noticed obvious odors before, and I didn't know if it was just a blockage or something that occurred. And when you mentioned that you guys are doing maintenance and inspections, that kind of makes me think that that wasn't the problem. So I was just wanting to bring that to your attention.
Okay, thank you. So feel free to call that number, and then, because we put sensors in different manholes when we suspect something, and if that gives us data, because we can't be everywhere all the time, but we do have sensors that we put into our sewers to be able to give us information and indication of what's happening. So we do have some things that we can do, but ideally we appreciate when we get calls from people who have questions like this. We can do some send someone out there to investigate it, get some information from you, and then determine what is it. We try to get information to determine what's the next step.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Next we had Amy Reese.
This is actually Jen Carter, Amy's wife. We're at 4540 Coppice, just for notes. So my question is really about who was operating and who currently operates CSO 125. So I was wondering if you could tell us who was operating CSO 125 on the night of the flooding incident, so June 15th, 16th, 2019. And when I say operating, I guess I mean who was opening the pipes and the gates, and who was making the decisions about opening the pipes and the gates immediately before and after that flooding event. And then who's operating CSO 125 now? So again, who's making the decisions about what, when and how things are being opened in the pipes and the gates now?
This is a passive system. There are no gates to open, no valves, no gates. It activates when it rains, and it just flows by gravity. So there was no one to make decisions like that then or now.
Mm-hmm. So who was making decisions about the project at that point then? I mean, someone had to have made decisions about cutting the hole and things like that. I mean, who was making those decisions at that time?
In 2019, the project was still under the control of the contractor. It was around the time of substantial completion, so being turned over to MSD.
Okay,
so because it was still an active construction project, the contractor was responsible for that site. Obviously they were doing the work for MSD, but they were responsible for the fact that it wasn't vegetated yet, and they had to they were actively working on that site. It had not been officially turned over yet to MSD for operation.
Next we had Laverne.
Go ahead, Laverne. Are you still there? Is Laverne muted?
They've unmuted themselves, but we cannot hear you.
Turns on a phone. Okay. All right, there she is.
I still can't hear you.
Laverne, do you want to try to type in your question if we can't hear you? Maybe while
If you try
Laverne
*9, that should unmute on a phone.
She is
Laverne, do you wanna-
unmuted.
Is unmuted. Okay.
Yes. If we want to move on to Noel, while Laverne either types her question or fixes the issue.
Yeah, so I think that one of the questions that came to my mind when I heard the other person talking is, you know, who are you guys representing, and who are we supposed to go to with issues? You know, I call SBU when I have a backup. They might tell me it's stormwater. I have stormwater come out. They're telling me, you know, it's MSD. So because we're a particular, you know, part of this project, we're somewhat, I think, I guess fallen under the guise of this project that was done by MSD. But, you know, there's that whole city county thing. And you know, I think I personally have both issues. I feel like it's both issues that are causing problems for a lot of the people, talking about the water runoff from the hill, which is why the project was created, is to help with that water runoff from the hill that's causing the overflows in the combined sewer. So, you know, how do we go about if we do have conflicting, I guess, systems at play, and then maybe what is your realm, you know, so that we just know who to sort of direct things to. I feel like I have a separate issue of my own self, east versus west, you know, versus the two systems or whatnot. So what do we do about that? What's the best route to take so it's just not difficult for us?
So again, I'll just say the 352-4900. We will come out and at least identify what is the problem if it's related to an MSD problem, because this is a separate storm system that we put in specifically for CSO reduction. So while the stormwater utility is the responsible agency for stormwater management, there are, you know, some things as it relates to the this whole system that we've developed for CSO control is managing stormwater. So we might go out there and see, yeah, maybe your problem is that you've got, you know, hillside drainage coming onto your property, and, you know, and that is not necessarily MSD's responsibility. Everybody who's, you know, myself and Ryan and Diana and Eric and Deb, we are with the Metropolitan Sewer District. So we operate and maintain the Metropolitan Sewer District. Ryan oversees and manages the construction and engineering program of MSD. And our primary, you know, focus is on the collection, conveyance, and treatment of sanitary sewage and combined sewage, and also addressing combined sewer overflows, and then operating the systems that we have constructed to help address CSOs. So stormwater has other, you know, they also have things to do, a lot of things to do as it relates to storm sewer. And I do understand it is confusing to the average person of, you know, I just want my problem solved. And sometimes it does require, you know, us to look at it, stormwater to look at it, and, you know, us to figure out whose responsibility is it. A lot of times, some of these issues, though, are private issues. They may not be either MSDs or stormwater utilities. And that's the nature of the jurisdiction that we both have. But if it's something specifically related to our system and the flows that we're handling, then we will at least be able to investigate it and help point you in the right direction if we can't address it.
So I think you guys might have my east and west. I did ask, when would you reach out by, and what platform would you reach out? Are you gonna call or email? Or what do you think? Just to help my specific one. Sorry, everyone. I'm so worried about my stuff.
I'll get your contact information from Deb, and we'll get in touch with you tomorrow through whatever means that she has for you, either email or chat or phone.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Eric, do we have somebody else? Did Laverne get the muting?
Laverne did not come back with her hand raised, but Sandy Kelly has raised her hand.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
Sandy?
hi. Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We have a copy of a report from after the flooding event. I can't remember, maybe a year or so ago, where our property was listed among other properties on an MSD report as being for demolition because they're in a floodplain. And would you address that? I don't think we were supposed to have that report. It was in error, but it is an MSD report. And would you please address that? Because they had listing of our property, which is the auditor's amount to it, and it had totaled them up and said that these properties are in a floodplain and should be demolished. And would you please address that?
Well, I don't know exactly what report, not having it, what you're talking about, but I'm suspecting that might be a pre-application that would have been for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So we did consider a potential FEMA grant. We actually had already done one in Northside along West Fork Creek in probably about 2012, 2014 timeframe. And so FEMA did come out with another round of a grant opportunity. And this was, I think, shortly after the June 19th event. And, again, we didn't know what was the potential cause or source of the problem that was experienced in June 2019. And there were a number of different applications that MSD, a pre-application that MSD submitted to FEMA. It was ultimately determined that we were not going to move forward with the pre-application to FEMA. And so that was something that it was really with an abundance of kind of caution to try to, see if this was going to be something that was going to continue to happen, then that might be something we, could propose to the community. And again, just to recap a little bit on the FEMA project and any of the grants that we get or anybody gets from FEMA for hazard mitigation, those have to be voluntary sales. Those cannot be eminent domain. And so the first step is to always put together the pre-application and identify potential properties that may be benefiting from a voluntary acquisition program. And that's what that was. And so that if that's what it is not something that MSD was saying, we are going to demolish these and we need to take these houses.
No, but do you know what that does to our property values to have a report out there like that? I mean, you're in a floodplain. If we were to try and sell our house and a realtor were to get a hold of that report, do you know what that does to our property values? These are people,
Yeah, and just to clarify, that property, that this area is not a floodplain. It
well,
wouldn't
then
actually.
maybe we need to get a letter from you guys saying, okay, this isn't a floodplain because it's out there that it is a floodplain.
Yeah, it's not a floodplain.
We didn't think it was either. We certainly,
Yeah.
But when we saw this official report coming from you guys to FEMA about demolition of our property, we're thinking, holy Toledo, what is this? What is going on?
And if it's what I recall, it's not even an official report. It
just looked official to me. It had the MSD logo.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you continue.
No, I would like to hear from you, Diana. I really would.
Well, I think I just wanted to add on this that that was public. I mean, it wasn't something that we ended up going forward with, but it was all public information that went into that pre-application. And that information was obtained from things like you said, the auditor's value and the past reports of flooding that were made to MSD. So it is all available public information. And then the pre-application that was prepared was also a public document. We didn't go forward with it, and therefore we never came to you as property owners to say, you know, are you interested in this program if we proceed and get the funding from FEMA? That would have really, you know, we really, when we look at these, we kind of take the information that we have, compile it, and then make decisions as far as, you know, what we're going to move forward and what we're going to, you know, really go after in terms of that funding that, you know, it's fairly competitive, and we need to make sure that we're able to take, you know, that we feel strongly enough about it before we even approach homeowners. But, you know, I understand that it's been interpreted in a way and been labeled as a demolition list, but it wasn't a demolition list, and it wasn't a report about demolition. As Mary Lynn explained, it was information that was compiled to support a pre-application for a FEMA grant that would have provided funding had we gone through with it, that we would have then approached homeowners to see if there was interest in a program like that. And for various reasons, again, we didn't proceed with that. We proceeded in a different direction with other properties. But, you know, I understand what you're saying in that you feel as though that listing in and of itself is impacting your property value, but I just want to be clear that there wasn't anything about that report that wasn't already public information that anyone would be able to find. Were you looking to sell your property? So, you know, the history of what you've reported and what has occurred at your home is really all we were compiling there. So I'm not sure where it got, I guess, misconstrued as to the intent of that. But I hope what we shared today helps you understand that a little better and clarifies that
Yeah,
for you.
I would just like to see something from someone that says your house isn't in a floodplain, because that report clearly said your house is in a floodplain, you know? So.
Well, I don't think it did, but it would have had to, we would have had to establish a boundary of an area to qualify for the funding. But that would have all had to have been work that we would have done to support the application had we continued. So it may be because of the stage we were at, you know, that it appears to reference that. I have not looked at it recently. So I think Mary Lynn and I, you know, we'd be happy to go back and take a look. And if there's some clarifying statement, letter, report we can provide, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate that, because the housing price, the market price that showed in that report is approximately half of what the house is worth or what it would sell in the market today. So
yeah, exactly. And I just want to clarify too, we actually did get a FEMA grant for Muddy Creek, and that, you know, a similar pre-application was done there. And that auditor's value is really just a starting point. You know, nobody ever should think that the auditor's value is the value of your home, you know? And so even as part of the subsequent grant application that was submitted and ultimately approved, it's, you know, perhaps I think like a 1.5% factor on top of what the auditor's value is, or potentially even 35% higher, something like that. You know, I mean, it's not that auditor's value.
Yeah, I appreciate you addressing it. I just wish it hadn't have happened. So, but thank you.
Yep.
Mary Lynn, Laverne was able to enter her question into the chat.
Okay. Would you like to read
it to you?
Yes,
or,
please.
Okay. CSO 125 was designed to hold a 100-year flood in the North Basin, but according to info we have obtained after it was built, it didn't hold the capacity it was supposed to hold. Why is MSD not going to fix the North Basin so that it holds the 100-year flood like it was designed? Tell me why we aren't getting what we paid for.
Good point.
Ryan, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. As you explained in the presentation, Mary Lynn, This is part of the LMCPR, so there are 22 projects, and we have an aggregate overflow reduction target that we have to meet. So the project's constructed. It may be that we don't have to do anything with the North Basin. We won't know until this period of post-construction monitoring, flow analysis, and calibration is completed, which will be another year. But it's very possible that we don't have to make any additional modifications at the North Basin. It doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean that it's not providing value and overflow reduction right now.
Mhm.
And I saw some other comments about the cost of construction. That information has been reported. I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but we could get that out there.
Yeah, and I'll just tag on to that a little bit too, with regards to that particular question. So if it's not going, so I think that maybe part of the question and is about the ability for the North Basin to hold water too. We need to make sure that, you know, we wouldn't want to just kind of seal up that 5x5 connection to the combined sewer that we've created, because that's a lot of pressure for that the dam or the berm to hold back. And I guess, like as Ryan said, if we don't need to put that much pressure on it in order, you know, for CSO reduction, there's no reason to block that hole right now. I mean, like Ryan said, we may have enough CSO reduction to meet the standards that we have, and we don't want to compromise the safety of that dam. But I do believe that you know, engineering is working with the designer currently to evaluate you know, really the capacity of that basin. So we don't really have all the answers to that question right now. And but as the designer and engineering is, you know, working through some of those details, we may have that you know, answers to that in the next several months, but not anything that we can really answer to that right now. But those are some of the evaluations that are underway.
Okay, I think Laverne also wants to know, just if you're not going to do anything to North Basin, will you have to increase capacity at Martha Basin?
No.
Well, and yeah, yeah, go ahead.
They're not related, and we don't necessarily have to increase any capacity at the CSO 125, North Basin or Martha Basin. We have an aggregate reduction target that we have to meet for the LMCPR 22 projects. We are holding the designer accountable for the design flaws. You know, that'll take some time to resolve, but it's not something that we've abandoned or that we're giving up on. I also noticed the questions from Marilyn about the cost of the project and, you know, what are we getting for the money? And, you know, we will hold the designer accountable, but we also have to consider that the total cost of the LMCPR, this is includes the lick run, valley conveyance. I mean, it's a couple $100 million in total, and you know, this was one small part of it, and we're meeting a aggregate overflow reduction amount for a couple $100 million. So overall, we believe it is working.
And again, just to tag on to that, the North Basin has that additional relief to the combined sewer. So in terms of, you know, that flow is not getting into the Martha Basin. So the flow is getting relieved going into the combined, so that the difference between what the North Basin can handle and a 100-year storm, it's not like that amount is now going, you know, putting pressure on the Martha Basin. That volume difference is being handled, you know, in part by that relief that is constructed for the combined. So there's no additional pressure on the Martha Basin. Is that correct, Ryan?
That is correct. They are disconnected in that way.
Yep.
You know,
Okay.
Yeah, the only other
just-
thing I wanted to add that I didn't know if you guys said, I thought you kind of said it, but for this project, we're not at all denying that this has not performed as we expected and as it was designed. And we're continuing to not only make modifications, but evaluate what additional modifications can and or must be made. And as we alluded to, there are ongoing issues with respect to holding the folks that made these errors accountable. But I want to say that the other projects, we know we are achieving more than we potentially expected to achieve, which is why in the aggregate, we're achieving our compliance from these projects. So where we may be getting more, from some than what we expected when we paid for it, we're getting more for our money in some and less for our money here. I think, and our objective overall is to make sure that we're complying and meeting our compliance obligations for the entire project as they were set, the entire suite of projects as they were set out. So I think, as frustrating as it is, to you all and us, that this is not performing as we initially set out to, we're really looking at that larger picture. And I know Ryan said the same thing, but it's really important, wanted to emphasize that. And the fact that we're continuing to consider if we need to modify this further.
Mhm.
And if anyone was following, I think we may have missed one or two, but I'm not sure where we're at on the chat.
Yeah, Deb or Eric, can you identify if there's any additional questions that we haven't gotten to?
Yes, we still have one person with their hand raised. The name says Amy Reist. I know you specified it was somebody else, but that's the number I'm seeing, or the name I'm seeing.
Yeah, so this is Jen Carter again, 4540 Coppice. So I guess what I'm really struggling with still at this point is the amount of contradictory statements that have come from MSD through this process. So for example, when we first met with you right around the time of the flooding event, you mentioned that the project was substantially complete. And you reiterated that tonight when you went through the slides, that at the time of the breach and the flood, that the project was substantially complete. But then in future correspondence, and I can't remember exactly when, but you said that the project was not substantially complete at that time. And then tonight you're telling us that the project is finally substantially complete. So I feel like we've gotten contradictory information about that. I feel like we've gotten contradictory information about the amount of water that it will hold. And so, having the 100-year basin, and now you're telling us you aren't going to put in a 100-year basin. So I think this is just indicative of some of the contradictory information that we received from MSD throughout this entire process. And so I don't know that this is really a question, more maybe of a statement, but in light of all of this and what we've been through as a community, it's really hard to kind of believe what you're telling us today. I mean, I think your graphics are great, and I think that you're helping us to see what this project is supposed to do, but I guess I'm not sure how we're supposed to believe that what you're telling us today is actually correct information. So I think as a community, I think what we would really like to see is some kind of independent oversight consultant that would be provided by the county and paid for by MSD that would actually help as we go through this process. You indicated that there may be additional changes, but an independent oversight consultant to look at the plans and advise us independently of what the system is doing and can do and what it will do and how it will work in the future. Because I think just in terms of the contradictions, I'm not sure how we're supposed to expect that what you're telling us is the whole truth at this point.
So this is Ryan. I'd like to understand more about the contradiction, because when this happened, we said it was close to substantial completion. The date that's been reported to the US EPA for substantial completion was July 1st, 2019. And that's never changed. So I'm not sure what may have been said that would have led you to believe that there were inconsistent dates, but I'd be happy to try to clear that up.
Well, I mean, I think you're contradicting yourself even now, because now you're saying it was close to substantially complete, not substantially complete.
Well, it was declared substantially complete as of July 1st, 2019. So, that's 2 weeks after
2020.
this.
No, it was 2019.
So that's only 2 weeks after the flooding event occurred. So I think everyone could agree that at the time of the flooding, the project was very close to being completed. It was declared complete. It's been reported to the EPA for a long time now, July 1st, 2019. That is the date of substantial completion, and that has not changed.
Yeah, and also just to add to that, that substantial completion is a somewhat, term of art. So it's not the same as completion. So substantial completion has a meaning, and it's based on the functionality of the project. It did not mean that, all of the, everything we see today was in place. So there was still work going on for quite some time after that declaration of substantial completion in 2019, but that did take place just after the flooding event.
And I want to correct that. I want to correct that too.
Go ahead,
actually, just before the meeting, I pulled our consent decree report, and actually I recollect now we corrected the consent decree report because there was an error that we made just in the reporting. And you were correct, both Diana and Ryan, because I think in the slide, I did have a typo in the slide. It is, you're correct, it's July 1st, 2019. It was just weeks after the event. And that was misreported in our consent decree report. And then we corrected that. And unfortunately, just before the meeting tonight, I grabbed the one that wasn't corrected that was posted on our website, which we subsequently updated. So I apologize if I just misspeak and I had that incorrectly located on this slide here. So I apologize for that and for that error that I made on the slide.
So can you just clarify? So who made that declaration? Like who makes that decision? Who made that declaration that it was substantially complete at that point?
Well, so again, those decisions are that's from our engineering division, and we have a project manager, and Ryan Walsh oversees that team. So a determination of a project substantial completion is made by a project manager and in consultation with our chief engineer. But I want to emphasize it. When we say a project is substantial complete, I mean, we're not suggesting to you all that, number one, there's additional things that even the construction contractor has to do before its completion. So there's a period of time between substantial completion and completion that varies. And there's a lot of things that the contractor still has to do before their project is complete. So they're still, still their project. And then in addition, we're not denying the fact that it was completed, but we have issues that we've identified that we're continuing to evaluate and to determine whether or not we need to make changes. So that would be the start of new work.
Yeah, like a shakedown.
That project had to be closed out and completed. In the big picture, the way it matters to you all, are we done? No, we're evaluating it. I can't say what we will do, but I think it's very likely there are additional modifications. They may be very minor, and they may be more substantial. But as we determine what those are, we're going to make that information known. You mentioned kind of maybe a lack of trust or questioning things, and I think I understand your frustration. There is a very transparent process when we need to do additional work. We need to get funding. We have to go to the county commissioners to do that. There will be public meetings. We are committed to continuing to communicate with you all any changes that we make. So I think, from our end, we believe that, that we will provide you all the information that we can as soon as we know it. We just don't have all those answers yet. And you know, as soon as we do, I think whether it's another meeting, information that we send you by email, you know, we're going to continue to update you all. And again, as soon as we actually are at a point where we would need additional funding to do work, that would trigger an approval process through the county commissioners, and that would have to also be public.
So I guess,
But,
I'm
and I guess
sorry.
I just to interject, I think we could, you know, we could commit to, you know, another follow-up meeting, whether it's like this or in person. I mean, I think many people like the fact that we can get back together like this, potentially in the fall after we have more information on where we stand on some of the outstanding questions.
So I guess it's my understanding that if something is substantially complete, then that would mean that it functions as it was intended to. Is that what you're saying when you say something is substantially complete? And if so, then I mean,
substantial completion.
If I
Yes.
can,
There-
if I can, I mean, it means that it was constructed as it was, you know, as we intended it to be, but there's a period of what's called shakedown. We need to see how is it actually performing now. You know, all of these different components need to work together, and that's what is evaluated really after substantial completion to determine what additional modifications might have to be done. Because, you know, just because things are all constructed, that doesn't mean they all work together. And that's what, you know, additional evaluations and considerations need to be taken after substantial completion. Brian, do you want to add to that?
And I'll add to that and say that substantial completion is really a legal definition for our consent decree. As Diana said, it doesn't mean construction stop, but it means for us, the system was built. There was no substantial construction that could have occurred to make the system operate better. It's working as it was on July 1st of 2019. It is removing wastewater from the combined sewer system, or taking stormwater off, reducing combined sewer overflows. It is functioning, and we don't know how good it is functioning, but we is removing a considerable amount of overflow from the system.
Yeah, and we've continued to improve how it's functioning, you know, such as lowering the spillway, making modifications to the vegetation, the flexomat, the erosion control, you know, various modifications that are helping it to actually function and perform better for the numerous, you know, issues that we're trying to all perform properly and safely within the community setting.
Yeah, so and Sue had a question that
and I did too. I can't wait any longer. I would like, on a personal level, that I really don't care about your work schedule and how many millions of dollars you all have spent to correct your own problem. But when we built our houses in this neighborhood, take pictures of it before, take pictures of it now. We would have never built in this area with 2 big holes around it. I wouldn't have. Our neighborhood looks like a dump. Anytime anybody comes on the street, what is that? What's that? What's this? What's that? Our neighborhood didn't look like this 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Whether you all are paid staff, you go home to your beautiful community. We don't have anywhere to go. So it's just, I just at a level that, and you all have not communicated with us. You all not made us not have PTSD. You all have not made us whole. You all have not. And if it happened to you as an individual, your family, your kids, your family, you would have probably, I don't know, but you understand what we're dealing with. So you're covering your bases, you're covering this, you're answering that, you're saying this. But the fact of it is you destroyed our community. We asked you not to come in this community. I didn't buy this house with that. I bought a park across the street. a beautiful park, and now it's 2 big holes all around us. So I just have to express this, and I understand you're covering. That's what you all get paid for. You're going to cover everything little thing. I don't use profanity, but you're covering everything so that you don't act like you're not doing your job. But in the meantime, we homeowners are suffering badly. And I'm sorry I had to do that, but it's just getting to me after 2 years of nothing from you guys.
I hear you. And all I can say is that we're committed to, to doing better, and we've been working on it. So I hear you, and I wish that I could go back, and we can't. So I apologize, and for what it's worth. I know it's not worth much, but we're here today, and we have been working on it. We've been trying to communicate. There hasn't been a lot other than the few things we've communicated over the last year to provide, any substantive information other than the few things that we've provided. So thank you though for sharing how you feel, because we're here listening. And I know there's somebody else has their hand raised, and I think,
Yeah.
and I kind of lost who it was.
Yeah, it's
Reba Hennessy.
Yeah, it's me. Marzell, thank you for sharing that. I think we all share your emotions. And about MSD doing its best and its accountability. Back after the flood, the city and the county's elected officials publicly said that those of us who suffered damages would be made whole. And some of my neighbors had a really long struggle just to get their houses back together. And 3 of us still haven't received any compensation at all for that damage to our houses. I'm one of those people. We need to be able to get our house back together. This promise was made by you guys, and now it's been nearly 2 years later. And every year our suffering gets worse with how these waste problems are impacting our family's health and safety. Why aren't policymakers directing MSD to live up to the public promise to make us whole?
Thank you for your question. I can just, with respect to your individual claims, we are, that is really being handled by lawyers, unfortunately, so we can't discuss those. We have been trying to resolve all of those claims as quickly as possible. And I know that yours is one of the few that is still outstanding. But I can't get into that. If there are a few outstanding questions, I think. Maybe one person asked what the definition of substantial completion is. I just wanted to go back again just on that subject with respect to the difference between completion and meeting the design objectives. So, we are acknowledging it is correct that the project did not meet all of the design objectives, but when we bid a job, so it's a public construction job, we bid it with a set of specifications that are all developed and prepared by the design engineer. And that is what the construction job is. It's what they're paid for. And when they complete all of the work, plus any change orders, so we can request change orders, which we did to make the modifications. They can, they have change orders, but when they get to the end of it, the construction job is done. We now need to go back and say, okay, it's not meeting all of the initial objectives. Do we need to do more? Again, that is really a separate determination. And so substantial completion has to do with the function of the flow. So in this project, we built a stormwater pipe. That stormwater pipe was able to convey the flow out of the basin, with the outlet structures to carry some water still to the combined sewer. So once all of that was completed and connected, and that's probably a really simplified explanation, but that is what substantial completion is based on. So, there's always a lot of additional punch list, shakedown, a lot of other things that take place before the construction job is actually complete. They're fully paid and they're off the site and is turned over to MSD completely. So if there's other questions about that, we can get into that, but I think maybe there's other things if we've missed or other hands raised.
Yeah, Deb, I think you're looking at the chat. Is there anything that's outstanding in the chat questions?
I'm not seeing anything because you guys have gone back.
Okay.
If someone if we have missed a question, please let us know. We're not trying to skip over them, just trying to keep up with them. So.
Yep. And you can follow up, send a question to either Deb or, MSD Communications at cincy-oh.gov. Like I said, this has been recorded and we will post this, make this available. And like I said, we can certainly provide a follow-up meeting like this sometime in the next several months. Again, we might not have all the answers then, but we do want to be able to try to provide, a way to communicate with you. As Diana said, we apologize for how long it's been. COVID certainly had an impact on that. We have been able to resume meetings like this, which has been very nice to be able to, meet with you all to talk about this. We're happy to do that again at another time. And just follow up on, current status of things. We're not going to stop utilizing and operating these basins and making, whatever modifications that we, are the experts say are the ones that we need to make. But more importantly, we're operating it, we're looking at it, we're reviewing the data, we're, making sure that the structures are free and clear and able to do what we need them to do. And we don't want it to, you to think like it doesn't look nice. I mean, and we can talk about, whether there is some, I think one of the questions that we did receive, can a trash can be put out someplace? We can work with parks, we can work with public services, and try to get something like that put out there, if that would make sense. But there are other public partners that want to see this successful, and but more importantly, we do want to have a communication channel and follow up and schedule something out in the next probably like September timeframe, or or earlier potentially. I don't know. It depends on when we have more information, but we can at least put something out there on a calendar and regularly have an update session, if that would be helpful. And it is 9 o'clock now. I don't know that we have any other questions coming in. With that, like I said, just want to thank you for your time and willingness to hear us out and ask your questions, and know that we don't have all the answers right now, but we're trying to get things taken care of, and I know we're always looking at how these basins are functioning, and Leslie and her crew are working feverishly to make them reliable and keep the structures free and clear. That's what we do. We want to make the most of the assets that we've constructed. So with that, I think we are, I think we're ready to wrap up. Deb has provided her email address, so please funnel things that way to Deb if you have any additional questions. Noelle and Jen, we will be following up with you on some of the issues that you brought up. And everybody, please make a note of 352-4900. We will talk with our dispatch crews and make sure that they're aware. We have made them aware of the fact that these are different systems than MSD has constructed in the past, and they're aware of that. That these are different issues that we sometimes have calls come in to address. So if there's anything else that you want to say, Diana or Ryan, before we sign off here? Or any last
questions? Just thank you everyone for your time and for coming on tonight, and we'll be in touch and schedule additional meetings and communicate as soon as we can.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
All right, thank you, everybody. And again, thanks for your time. And we'll look forward to scheduling this in the next several months, probably like in the September timeframe, unless something comes up sooner, to schedule something then. Thank you.